Oh, hi.
Vivian, Meredith is here. Let's take some time to say hello before we kick this off.
Hey, Vivian. Hi, Meredith.
Hi, Meredith. So good. Hello, wonderful humans. I love it. Happy Saturday.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, so it's great. Thanks to everybody for joining. We're gonna just sort of talk a little bit and kick this thing off. Let's talk about inspiration, and then we'll, in just a second, we're gonna mute everybody, and then we'll take questions, and we'll unmute again at the end and take more questions if they come up. And there's opportunities. There's a chat. We'll pop that up periodically so you know where the chat is. And if you're not familiar with Zoom, it's not too hard. I think everyone's probably a little bit familiar with Zoom or other sort of little conferencing systems. So it's not too bad, right?
Does everybody know where the chat is? Yeah, you got it? Okay, fantastic. Because we're going to use the chat both to answer a couple of questions in a moment. So we're going to gather kind of where we all are collectively. But also we're going to use it for questions throughout as we're going throughout, or if you're having any technical difficulties. So it's important that you know where the chat is so we can communicate. Roland will mostly be presenting and I'll be chiming here and there. Those of you who know me know it's very hard for me to shut up. So it'll be hard to not be the one talking most of the time. So I'll control myself as best as I can. Our neighbors are practicing competitive mowing. It is Saturday morning here, so hopefully you can have good sound. We are
like in stereo. You got mowing over here, you got mowing over there.
Yeah, so there's plenty of space between the houses, but when everybody's mowing at the same time, it creates this like cathedral effect where you can just hear it.
Yeah, we had the windows open so you could hear the cicadas, but we had to close off the cicadas because the mowing overwhelmed the cicadas.
Beautiful. Well, thank you all for being here. Hi, Melissa. Welcome. I don't know that I know you personally, so I'm very, very happy that you're here. Hi. Welcome. And feel free to let us know in the chat where you are. If you're new to us, if we're new to you, we'd love to know where you are in the world. I'm just going to kind of collectively say where everyone is. So Sandra and Kristen are in Hawaii on different islands though. Noreen and Mike are in Southern California. Karen's in Utah, in Salt Lake. Jenny's right in the Four Corners in New Mexico.
New Mexico.
And you are on Navajo Nation territory, aren't you, Jenny? Yeah, amazing. And she taught us this morning she's in our membership, so she taught us in our community meeting how to say hello in Navajo, and I've already forgotten. So I'm gonna have to ask her again. And then Melissa's in Southern California, fantastic. Old neighbor to us, now that we're in Colorado.
Jenny's gonna tell us.
Oh, Jenny, tell us.
Oh, Yate Abina. Good morning, everyone.
Yate. Yate. Love it. I just have to practice. And Vivian's here. Vivian's in Denver, yeah?
Yeah.
Vivian's like in our backyard. Why are you not on our couch? You should be here with us. And Meredith is in Chicago, and Julie P, I can only assume is Julie Pepper, is in Seattle. So we have a nice gathering of wonderful humans. I don't know where everyone else who's watching the recording is, but we have about 40 of you registered, and I hope that this is time to get some inspiration, get excited. If you need to get excited about cooking, I think keep it simple. I love it. And I think it was Karen who said earlier, she's here to learn how to love cooking. And well, I hope that you can leave with that, Karen. Wouldn't that be amazing if you just like leave here and just love cooking? It would be like one webinar changed my life. It'd be the greatest testimonial ever. So let's take a moment to just talk about the inspiration, how this talk started, because Roland, it's Roland's fault that we're here.
Yes. So let me do the spotlight video, right?
Yep.
All right. So hopefully we are in full screen now, or like as close to full screen as Zoom gets. And so the inspiration here is when the lockdown or the quarantine started, everyone went home. Everyone got sent home, including the people at Microsoft, right? And we have a friend who has been working with Microsoft, and they realized that the people at Microsoft were stir crazy and they didn't know what to eat, and they started to reach out for those nostalgic foods, just like so many of us did and so many of our clients and readers did. So they reached out to me and asked if I could do a presentation to help them sort of get through those barriers and to kind of relearn like how to stock foods in the pantry when the grocery stores are at the time are empty, and they're still crazy, but they're not as empty, but you still can't always find the same things you want. Like when every food seems like the same old food week after week or day after day, like how can we freshen things up and still eat healthy when things are sort of out of your control?
Yeah,
Right?
and also when stress is really high.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I was so shocked because Roland kind of deals with all things nutrition in our realm, and all things nutrition.
All the things.
And when Microsoft reached out to him for a nutrition talk, I was like, I wonder what they will want. And I imagined that they would want something really fancy. You know, sometimes you get invited to present and it's like, can you talk about the role of omega-3, 6, and 9 fatty acids in performance? Because we're really trying to increase the performance of our teams. And I've given some corporate lectures that are just insanity, what people have asked me to do. And when they asked him to talk about cooking, I was so both excited and relieved, and also had a moment of like, thank God people are finally starting to get it. Because it doesn't matter what you know about nutrition. It is absolutely meaningless what you know about nutrition, how many nutrition books you've read, how full your library is. If you cannot take your knowledge into your hands, and if you cannot put that knowledge on your plate and then in your body, it's absolutely meaningless what you know. And this is one of the greatest frustrations people come to us with, is I know what to do, but I don't do it. Why don't you do it? Because there are other habits and other things that get in the way. And when you are stressed out, the front of your brain that is responsible for the wise decisions of your life goes offline. And the way to put this part back on board is to create space in your life to learn what it is that exactly is going to get the knowledge from your head into your hands and then onto your plate, and to spend time with other people who care about the same stuff. Mm-hmm. So those of you who are here, who have taken precious hour of your weekend to be with others who care about cooking, or who could care less about cooking, which is probably also how you've gotten, some of you have gotten here on the recording, is really important, because this is how our brain starts to know, I'm in control, I've taken some time, I got this. And you can start to connect to the wise parts of you instead of the instinctive parts of you that want instant gratification and can't do any planning and can't do any implementation when stress is really high. So I hope that you really have a great time learning and you get inspired and you use the tools that Roland's going to send you after to put some of this in practice in your daily life, and you really feel a massive change because of the action you've taken. Before we start, my last work as an assistant will be to ask you guys to go in the chat and to answer these two questions. Since lockdown, so we've had four months since March? 5 months.
5 months.
So in the last 5 months, what has been your greatest cooking challenge? And put that first. And what has been your greatest cooking win? Your greatest challenge and your greatest win. Even if your greatest cooking win is, I figured out I can use canned chicken It doesn't have to be anything fancy. It doesn't have to be making your own kale chips from scratch. What has been your greatest challenge and your greatest cooking win? And we're going to take all of those from the chat, and we're going to create a nice little graphic that you're all going to enjoy seeing later. And I'm monitoring the chat, so let's go for it.
And just to let you know, like, we're not looking for anything fancy. Like, one of my greatest wins was remembering that I like canned tuna, right?
Oh, yes.
And then I also like canned green beans. And like in an emergency, in a pinch, when I just don't have like the time, or like I can go, wow, you know what? I do enjoy and I'm satisfied like canned tuna, not always at the same time, like not like mixed together, but canned tuna, and I like canned green beans, like Adam's family recipe.
But there was in the beginning, we were going to the store every 2 weeks. And so canned food was very useful. Now we go every 10 days. We're going a little more. But we really quarantined hard. And Roland had, before quarantine started, Roland had fallen. He went to a retreat and fell in the snow, and he was really severely injured. So he had about 4 weeks of really being laid down. So our quarantine was like a month longer, and not being able to go to the store because he just couldn't physically walk in the store.
That was pre-quarantine.
He was pre-quarantine, yes.
Yes, awesome, great.
Very cool.
All right.
So I'm gonna read some of these out.
I'm gonna get sharing my screen while it's happening.
I'm gonna read some of these out as people are typing. So Vivian is saying her greatest challenge has been variety. Sandra, having meals at regular times. Melissa from Southern California, getting everyone in the family to eat the same meal. Oh, I hear you on that one. Remember Roland's kids, when they were younger, we had to make like 4 meals every time. Karen said the challenge has been new ideas for cooking, and her biggest win has been a crock-pot shredded chicken. Yes.
Oh yeah.
So yummy. Karen is saying her greatest challenge. Melissa next. Melissa's win has been some new recipes and having time to try new things. Julie Pepper from Seattle is saying her challenge has been over shopping to keep her visits less frequent, so ending up with more than she can use before the produce goes bad. Oh, I hate when that happens. Jenny is saying having limited fresh organic choices and sick of the same old, and her biggest win has been using the Instant Pot. Yes, great tool. Noreen is saying her challenge has been to integrate 2 eating styles and food choices in her family. I hear you on that one. And Kristen has been saying that the challenge has been the kid-friendly food. LOL, she says. Her LOL, not mine. Then Noreen's win has been that she's been able to eat healthier. And then Kristen is saying again, Kristen is in Hawaii, going fishing more and using local food. Yes, huge win. And then Sandra, also in Hawaii, is saying her win has been figuring out how to shop more efficiently, so she only has to go to the store every 4 to 6 weeks. Holy cow, you win, you're the winner.
That is serious.
And Vivian is saying her win has been using pulled pork in different ways. Vivian, I wonder if Roland taught you that. He's like the master of using pulled pork in different ways. And it's just so amazing. You know, it's interesting because in America overall, people don't eat a lot of pork. And then there's other countries where pork is such a regular food, like Germany and even Bulgaria. We eat so much pork. But pulled pork is its own beautiful thing. And then Meredith in Chicago is saying her challenge is mealtime consistency, or skipping meals happens a lot, and also variety. And her win, she's made delish vegetable soups, and she's gotten real creative with mixing leftovers to create new meals. Oh, so good. So beautiful. That is the best. That is probably, it's like being a leftovers DJ, you know, kind of like mix, having little mixing plates there. Beautiful. Thank you guys. These are just such incredible such incredible sharings from all of you. And as you share your challenges and your wins, others listening to others' challenges, I'm sure you can find yourself in those challenges too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I sure can. I felt myself in a lot of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to hand it over to Roland and
turn off our video here so I can scratch my nose with impunity.
That's hysterical. Okay, he's not scratching his nose.
No.
I'll keep track of that. So he's going to take you through some slides, and wherever appropriate, I'll interrupt and ask questions. Is that okay?
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, fantastic.
All right, so there we go. All right, so first of all, I just want to assure everybody that my goal, like with all of my coaching, all of my clients, and even our books, is to keep it simple, right? So teach you how to build simple systems around food and shopping, how those simple systems can reduce stress. Stock your pantry, keep it flexible and affordable. They give you plenty of options. And then how to build a real food plate, what we call it. So if those of you who have done the real food reset with us before are familiar with the real food plates, you're gonna see a picture of that in a minute. And then we're gonna get into how to mix and match, which is sort of what Galina and I do, almost, it's like habitual. Like we created this chart you're gonna see, it's Galina created, it's amazing, little brainstorming chart, but it makes it super simple, and it's like sort of like the behind the scenes on how our minds work when it comes to making foods and thinking of foods and ingredients that you put together to be able to build that plate, reframing your meals instead of focusing on, oh, what is the perfect meal that I can make tonight? Oh, I don't have those ingredients, because that's sort of a recipe for disaster, right? All right, so the first thing we want to talk about is stress, reducing stress. When I did the Microsoft thing, one of the things that they had sent in was like, I open up the refrigerator and it's like, it's either empty or it's filled with things that don't match, like mayonnaise and mayonnaise and leftover vegetables. And like, what are you gonna do with those things? So that stress of like, what are we gonna worry about to eat? And it gets even worse when it's the stress of feeding your family as well. Because not only do you want to feed them healthy things, but you don't want them to be unhappy with the food choices and constantly worrying about that, or just it adds to their stress as well. So the stress kind of goes around and comes around. So we're going to try to reduce stress with these little simple systems. So we've talked about before the stress funnel, and this is Galina's beautiful little artwork here. And if you'll notice, right in the funnel, there's a thing that looks like the virus, right? But she drew this picture back almost a year ago, before the virus was even like on our radars in November, before anything even came up with that, right? But if you look at this funnel, and you think of all of the things that can go into the top, so many things in your life. There's money and exercise, too much exercise, lack of exercise, bad food, too much food, alcohol, lack of sleep, all these things can go into the top. But no matter how many things go in, the bottom of the funnel is so small that things can only come out at its own pace, right? Only come out so fast. And what happens is eventually it overflows. So once the stress funnel overflows, that is when big problems happen, right? So what we try to do is limit the number of stressors that go into the funnel, even if it's the easy ones. So in this case, I'm going to give you the permission to take the easy way out. We call it the low-hanging fruit, right? So whether it's taking the easy way out or low-hanging fruit, you look around at all of life's stressors and you eliminate the ones that are very easy first. Start with the easy ones, because the big ones take time and they take energy, they take effort, and they can add more stress just because they're so hard to get rid of. So start with the easy ones, take the easy way out, take that low-hanging fruit, and you're gonna succeed at this a lot easier than if you start with the hard ones.
Is it okay to ask a question?
Sure.
Can you give an example of eliminating a small stressor in the realm of cooking?
Yeah, so we're going to cover it a little bit more, but if you have, let's see, if you have favorite foods, like a protein source, right? That are easy to either defrost quickly or cook from frozen, right? That's a great way. So we have Trader Joe's nearby, but most grocery stores have frozen burger patties, whether it's a chicken patty, turkey, beef, whatever kind of patty, or even vegetarian or vegan patties, right? They're very easy. You can buy a lot of them, keep them in the freezer, and in a pinch, you know you have something tasty that you enjoy to eat, you can just pull out and without even having to thaw it. I see.
The stressor you're eliminating is worrying about protein sources and sourcing. Julie, is it easier to hear now? I'm just sitting in I was sitting in a different place. Thank you, Julie, for letting us know. So no one can hear me. That's so strange. Can you hear me now? Now, yes, great. So the question I was asking Roland is if he could share about eliminating the stressor, like eliminating the low-hanging fruit in this case. And so the stressor you're eliminating is worrying about what kind of protein you're going to have by making it really easy to have an easy defrost protein source.
Correct.
Or a pre-made protein source.
Correct.
Okay, fantastic.
Okay. All right. So shopping lists, meal plans, recipes, these are all systems, right? Very simple systems, right? But creating a system, it can sound like a lot of work, but after a few times, we sort of forget about what systems we make, right? So you think about driving to the store. How many times have you driven to the store or to work or to school and you don't really remember how you got there? You're like, oh, I'm here, right? Because you've developed this system which turned into a habit and now you're just there. You were paying attention when you were on your way, but you've tuned out those things because they're just part of life now, right? Same with like making coffee. Like you can start and you can, you scoop a couple of things into the pot, into the filter, you push the button, you walk away, and you know when to come back. You practically don't even have to hear the thing beeping when it's done. Brushing your teeth is a great example, right? How many times have you checked your toothbrush to see if it's wet because you can't remember where you already brushed? You're like, but but almost every time you go back and it is wet because you did do it. So it's just become a habit. That's a system that's been properly and permanently implemented into your life. So the benefit of cooking at home, right, and doing all these things is to is basically that every meal you cook at home, you cook yourself, right? Whether it's it has the I lost my train of thought. Excuse me. Every meal you cook yourself saves about 134 calories. And these things really add up, right? So if you eat out 4 times a week, or if you eat a box of packaged food, right? Every time you do that, you add on average about 134 extra calories, right? And this is on top, this is even if you make virtually the identical food that you would have purchased outside of the home, or if you ate out of a box or a frozen meal, right? So that's just because when you do that, they tend to make a little bit more. They tend to use a little bit extra delicious flavorings like extra butter, extra olive oil, a tiny bit bigger serving size. And because they want you to be satisfied. It's not, they're not trying to make you overweight or unhealthy. They want you to be satisfied. So you come back or so you'll buy that thing again, right? So they've also made them extra delicious, which sounds good on paper, but extra delicious means that you're more likely to eat a little bit more than you would normally. It's artificially delicious, right? Hyper palatable, as we call it. But one of the benefits, the other benefits, just the mere fact that you're making food increases your fruit and vegetable consumption by over 22%, and increases the colorful produce consumption, which is very important for all those antioxidants, by 31%.
So these are average study numbers.
Yeah.
So you can imagine, you guys, some of you are such vegetable fruit lovers that you're actually increasing your intake by much higher percentages than these averages in the study.
Yeah, so if you look at this last part of the slide here, right, each meal you make increases dietary quality by 2 points. So it doesn't matter where you're starting. You can go from poor to fair, or fair to good, or good to great.
That's amazing. It always excites me so much to think about the power that we have when we make our own food.
Yeah.
And the ability to pretty much control everything from the source of whether you get something from the farmer's market or the organic aisle produce or something that you grow yourself, all the way to the quality of fats that go in, the cooking time, the freshness, the way you serve it, the way you enjoy it. And the fact that it also prepares your brain and your digestive system for the digestion of that food just by being around it. Because so often when we go out and we eat out, and you read about that in our book in the digestion chapter, the poop chapter, it's one of our favorite chapters. In there we talk about how food plops into your body like a guest that you haven't expected. But when you've cooked, the brain has already prepared your body for the assimilation of that food.
Hype it up a little bit.
and I think that it's just so, it gives you also a sense of control over your own life.
Yeah.
And it gives you a sense of confidence and a sense of participation in your own health. And I think those are benefits as well that cannot be measured in studies.
Yeah, and this doesn't even include the money you save, right? You save money. You can actually buy better food and make it at home than you would at a restaurant.
Oh,
for far less. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Yeah. But here is the real food plate that we've been talking about. Real Food Reset fans and readers will find this to be very familiar. And I sort of took this from the U.S. government's My Plate, and we decided to make it
if the government catches you for altering their ideas, they'll be so upset.
Yeah, so if you remember the real food plate from the government plate, it was basically the starchy carbs were like pretty much where it says protein and veggies right now. And then the rest was just like, oh, trivial little stuff, right? So we wanted to take the opposite. And the reason we have protein, veggies, and healthy fats all in one thing is because we don't want you to worry about the ratios of these things as much as the fact that you're getting enough of each one. Because they have a tendency to sort of work themselves out, and you sort of self-regulate when you have enough protein, enough veggies, and some good healthy fats, right? So that's the biggest chunk there, the biggest slice of it's not a pie, but the biggest piece of the plate, right? And then after that, there's some fruit. It doesn't have to be on the same plate. It can be like a dessert, or it can be a sort of a snack, but that's sort of the ratio that we like to see, or we recommend for people to start. Then you'll see 0-calorie drinks preferred. Water, of course, is a great thing. Most people need to drink a little bit more water, so it's great to have that. But the key there is the 0-calorie part, because it's not that a calorie-containing drink is the end of the world, but when you use that, it has a tendency to, those calories don't typically get registered in the brain. So it allows you to, or triggers you sometimes, to eat even more food at the same meal. Then of course we see starchy carbs off to the side. And the reason I put them off to the side, they're fine. Starchy carbs are healthy. They've been a part of our diet for thousands of years, and they're a healthy part. But for a lot of people, it has become the base of the food instead of something that you have as a supplement to your meal. And they're pretty optional for most people. Like you need protein, you need veggies, and you need healthy fats, but you don't actually technically need starchy carbs. So they're fine, but limit them, especially if you're not particularly active.
You know, I have this image of ordering a Chipotle.
Okay.
And those of you who have been to Chipotle or like a similar choose your own ingredients, build your own bowl kind of place, when you go to Chipotle, if you ask for a bowl, they'll first take you to the rice and the beans, and they'll put probably 4 servings of starchy carbs of rice at the base of your bowl, unless you tell them, can I just have 1 scoop? They'll put a ton of rice.
And they still give you a huge scoop.
And then they'll put a ton of beans, and then you go to a tiny little bit of decoration of vegetables, just decorative vegetables.
Well, the last time I went, they just passed right by that. Like they went straight over to the next thing, and I'm like, can you come back to these vegetables? Because it's peppers and onions and stuff like that.
So if you think about that, that's how a lot of us, we have our culture that's used to doing that. But that culture is also based on thousands of years of being physically very active. So if you're a farmer, rice and beans is totally fine. But if you're sitting in front of a computer all day, or if you are, a school teacher, you're not really expending that many calories that require this many starchy carbs and glycogen. So it's really interesting how it's seeped into the culture from thousands of years of eating certain ways because we're physically active, but now we're not. And so you can kind of think about reversing that idea in your mind, also topped with the fact that carbs are really darn delicious. And it's really easy to eat a lot of them without being really satisfied.
Yep.
So keep them on the side, you guys.
So we'll go through the individual things pretty quickly, but why do we lead with protein? Because it's one of the most satiating foods we can eat. Boosts metabolism, builds muscle, and it builds bone. There's a myth that protein leaches away bone, but it actually has been shown in studies that people who have a higher protein content of their diet retain bone and muscle, and they have a lower instance of osteoporosis and osteopenia. So be sure to lead with that protein. But pretty much any protein you can think of is a good source. We're not picky, as long as it tastes good and satisfying. When it comes to veggies, we always tell people to double up. And they say, well, I already eat a lot. But usually when you look at how much they're eating, it's not really that much. If you consider a bag of frozen vegetables, for instance, it usually says 5 servings on a 1 pound bag. And Galina and I eat that bag in one sitting, right? Not each, like we eat like half of it. Because when you think of these numbers are the 5 servings is recommended on the government's 5 per day. That's a minimum. And that was chosen to keep a minimum nutritional content, to keep people from starving, not to keep people from thriving. So double up on veggies. If you have any doubts, the more veggies, the better. And try for 2 to 3 servings per meal. Because remember, a serving is a minimum, and it's generally not enough. The benefits of veggies are that they're filling. They have tons of micronutrients, lots of antioxidants, vitamin, fiber. They're going to lead to great gut health and reduce your cravings overall. Because there's a subconscious that your body knows what it's eating from a macronutrient perspective and also down to the micronutrient perspective. So some of the cravings that we feel are based on lack of vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants that can be reduced quite a bit by increasing our vegetable content.
Yeah, and also vegetables, especially when they're cooked, oftentimes we have a sweet aftertaste. Mm-hmm. And you think of things like sweet peas or cooked sweet potatoes or peas or carrots or cooked tomato. And that sweetness that comes in, that both signals to your body that there's carbs and nutrients coming in and glycogen, but it also signals the sweet taste. And our body is always looking at a balance of tastes, sweet and sour and salty and bitter and astringent, right? Mm-hmm. And umami. And when we lack the sweet taste from fruits and vegetables, we'll often get these sweet cravings later on, and we will really want to go for chocolate or go for muffins or other things that might not necessarily be on your plan. So when you eat a salad that's just spinach and chicken, nothing there has a sweet flavor or a sweet aftertaste even. And so you can often crave sweets after a meal like that. So think about a variety of vegetables all the way down to beets that are sweet, and see if including more of those sweet vegetables balances some of your cravings if you find yourself craving under stress, especially.
One tip that I would say is that, like, one thing that Galina and I do is we typically look at something raw and something cooked every night. We're not super strict about it, but we've come to, like, we might have a little bit of a salad, but we also have something cooked. And that sort of takes care of a lot of these things. And especially if you have digestive issues, there are benefits. People jump too much on the, oh, things need to be raw or things need to be cooked, but there are benefits to both. You get different nutrients in different ways, and they're absorbed differently from both classifications of vegetables.
And the more you have digestive issues, the more cooked food is actually better for you. So the whole idea of like, oh, you should eat raw if you want to be healthy, it's actually a bit of a myth, and it can tax your system even more if you're not cooking your vegetables.
Yep. Talk about healthy fats. The best fats are the ones that already occur naturally in your foods. So we're talking about, olives, avocado, egg yolks, even the fat in meat and chicken and fish especially, right? But then other good fats are fats that derive directly from those foods without a lot of processing. So olive oil and butter, great for cooking, for extra flavor. And also nuts. So just think about like the fats that you have. It's not necessary to add more and more fat. Use as much fat as you need for cooking, and then rely on other fats for a little bit of flavor or just enjoying the natural flavor and texture and the feelings of the fats that are in the foods that you're eating. Olives on the fingers. That's always a great way to get your fats.
I love that picture. It's so tiny.
And what about fruit? So people say, fruit doesn't make you fat, and like no one's ever got fat from eating fruit, right? Which is true, but then you can also say no one's ever got fat from eating olives, or no one's ever got fat from eating chicken. It's like, maybe fried chicken, but it's not even that. Like you have to eat a lot of stuff. So sort of a misnomer. There's really nothing wrong with fruit. So eat at least 1 to 2 servings of fruit per day if you like fruit. I'm not a huge fan of fruit. Right? So Galina's rolling her eyes. She loves fruit. She's like a fruit bat. I like some fruit. In the summer, I eat more fruit. In the winter, not so much. So eat the seasons. It's great for dessert, flavor enhancers. We made in our membership this month, we have a recipe for fruit salsa that goes with grilled chicken. Also goes great with grilled fish. Also in the winter, especially, sometimes it's hard to get fresh fruit. Frozen is fine. It's very healthy. It's actually fresher sometimes than fruit you get at the store because it was picked and frozen on the spot.
Well, it can also really save you quite a bit of money to buy berries.
It's true.
Blueberries and raspberries, cherries, blackberries, acai, those tiny little berries that, typically sometimes can cost $5-6 for a little a little box of them. And I'm also thinking of like where Jenny is. Maybe she was saying she doesn't have as much access to fresh organic produce, and some of it can be also where you live and the accessibility. Like people living in Southern California are going to have a lot more access to berries than somebody living in the center of the country. And so if you can stock up on frozen berries that are so incredible for antioxidant qualities and for flavor enhancing, you can definitely benefit from that. So we really advise that you don't shy away from frozen fruits and vegetables.
Yep. Starchy carbs. This is always one that with low carb diets and keto always in the news, people sharing about these things, sort of a controversial topic. We don't believe that starchy carbs are the problem that a lot of people say they are. For some people, definitely they can be a problem, but they're pretty healthy. They, potatoes, squash, sweet potatoes, those are very healthy. They're starchy vegetables, right? Grains also, they can be very healthy when they're whole grain. The problem with grains is that they've become ubiquitous in our lives. Grains have become the foundation of everything, and they've been stripped of their nutrition. then more nutrition is artificially added back in. They're easily overeaten. They can trigger binges, all sorts of things like that, right? They are made artificially delicious. And so grains aren't ideal in large amounts, but they're okay in small amounts, right?
Yeah, and if you can make your own sourdough bread, or you have a good source of fermented grain products, then that's great. But most people will not be fermenting and making their own sourdough bread at home. It's just the reality of daily life. But if you really, really want to have bread, go for sourdough bread, as the fermentation process eats away most of the gluten, the large gluten proteins, and they get torn down into smaller, more digestible pieces. It doesn't tend to be as inflammatory for your body. But most of us have been overgrained from childhood, and so it's much better to go to starchy carbs that actually also bring more vitamins and minerals and nutrients to your body, and also signal satiety. Pasta, bread, and desserts and baked goods don't tend to do that as well.
Yeah, so on that first bullet with potatoes, squash, beans would be another one that could be on there. So they're great choices as well. And they've been, you know, and like in the paleo community, they've been a little bit misaligned, but even the strictest paleo adherents are starting to come around on beans, you know, just by properly preparing them and eating them, again, in moderation, because they don't need to be the basis of things. They just need to supplement, because they got plenty of nutrition.
There's beautiful nutrition in beans and legumes, and there's been so much fear-mongering in the diet and wellness world that has made beans and legumes bad. Talking about lectins, their whole, like Dr. Gundry, we follow all the quackery out there, just so you guys know, and all the fear-mongering. We're not living in a bubble, but we're also aware, and especially through what I teach, working with emotional eating and the nervous system, we're so aware that food fear is a bigger problem than the food itself. What you don't want is, you don't want to vilify a food because of mice studies. In the case with lectins, our bodies are incredibly good at breaking things down when we're adapted and when the foods are properly prepared.
And also, if you look at some of these studies or books that talk, or articles that talk about the lectins and the other things in food, realize that a lot of these looked at the food when it was raw, and they didn't reanalyze them when it was cooked. So for instance, I think it was like 97% of the lectins in beans and legumes get broken down by cooking, and you know, soaking breaks them down even more. So by the time if it's properly cooked, like if your beans are well cooked and had been soaked and rinsed, you're almost lectin free.
Yeah, and we're always looking for the villain. Is it gluten? Is it the lectins? Is it dairy? And while there's people with straight up allergies and intolerances, unless you have something that's proven, you can really benefit from relaxing and including all foods.
Yep. So to sum up on the real food plate, you know, lead with protein, lots of veggies, some fruit if desired, healthy fats, 0-calorie drinks, and then healthy starchy carbs are fine. Just limit them if you're not very active. So we're getting to the meat, the meat of things here. This is our mix and match matrix. And this was the key. This was the thing that the folks at Microsoft really liked. And we've shared this in our membership before. Very powerful. And this is the part early on where I said, this is a look inside how our brains work when it comes to putting together a meal. Because we don't usually say, I'm going to make, you know, like a pot roast with this and this side dish and these roasted potatoes. And that is the dish that we have every Friday or every Sunday. Like you might think of like a Thanksgiving dinner where like all of the meals are like all of the ingredients and all of the dishes are what you would expect. And if one thing is missing, there's a problem. No, we look at things a little bit differently. We think about like in the real food plate perspective, and we use this mix and match matrix in our brains or here on paper to come up with meals that are delicious and that they meet and they check all of the boxes. So you can see the first column there is protein, and sort of anything goes. You can kind of look down this list and say, which protein do I have handy? And you can look at the next one and say, oh, here's a theme sauce, because we encourage people to keep things like spaghetti sauce and curry sauce, salsas and simmering sauces in their pantry. They last forever, they're inexpensive, and they're a great way to spice up vegetables, protein, and starches, right? So if you just continue over the side, you can see that so many vegetables and fruits go with all of these different things. They don't have to be stirred into like a big pot together, but you can say, look, I can simmer some to take the first, let's look at the first one here. Oops. There we go. Let's look at the first line here to make it simple. You can look here, I have ground beef or ground turkey. Take my salsa. Then I look, what vegetables do I have? Whether they're frozen or whether they're fresh, or what fruits do I have? Then I can either pre-cook them or I can simmer some of them in the sauce with the salsa. And then I can use the last one to see, like, what am I going to use with this? Am I going to have tortillas? I have tortillas handy, so I'm going to make some tacos. I have lettuce cups. I have some rice. Or I could just make it as a salad. I could do greens. So it gives you a lot of options to just sort of go across with this mix and match recipe matrix. And if you look back at all of these things, there's so many different options, and you can make your own. But I'm going to be sending this thing out to you in email along with the replay.
I just want to say, based on what kind of foods you like, you can make different columns. Like here we made one for like more Mexican inspired with the salsa, or more like an Italian inspired, or an Asian inspired with the curry sauce. So depending on what kind of cuisines you like, you can think about what goes within this cuisine and how can I make my own mix and match table, so that I can start with one simple ingredient and then I can build it with what I have in my pantry. So to give an example with that first row, once again, perhaps you can, simmer your chicken with some salsa, and then you have the kind of red chicken that's like, wow, this is so delicious, and it kind of falls apart, and it's tomatoey, and it's tangy, and it's so cool. And now that can go inside your, lettuce cups if you want to make kind of lettuce-like tacos, or it can go into corn tortillas, or it can top a salad, or it can just become its own on a plate, its own chicken. And then on the side, you can have fajita vegetables, or you can make a salad, or you can have some rice. But you can start looking at what can I make from this really, really simple mix and match idea here. And this is kind of how our brains work all the time. Like the other day, we picked some cucumbers from our yard, and that was the base of, okay, so here we have cucumbers. I want to make some tzatziki, some Greek salad with the cucumbers, and I need some dill and some Greek yogurt to go in there, and we had that. And then we looked at the tzatziki, and it's like, well, what does that go with? And Roland said, well, we have fish or we have beef, and I can make meatballs. And I said, great, it goes great with meatballs. So he made meatballs, and then we also made some grilled vegetables, and that was it. And it was super, super easy. So you can start with just one concept and then think about what goes with that. What do I like? And those people who have challenges where there's many people in your family, for example, your kids all like different stuff, or your spouse and you eat different stuff. What we used to do a lot when Roland's kids were younger was, okay, we'll make chicken tortilla soup, but this person doesn't like onions, and this person doesn't like cilantro, and this person doesn't like the chips, and this person doesn't like cheese or doesn't like sour cream. And we just make the base and then have a little buffet where, everybody could build their own.
It's sort of like some families do like the taco bar kind of a thing, where they make all the different ingredients and then people make their own tacos. We did the same thing with tortilla soup. We had the base soup, and then you could add whatever you want into it.
And the other thing we do now, Roland's kids are a lot older, but the last time they were here, we made bowls. So it's the same. Imagine that you have your own Chipotle or you have your own kind of mix and match place. So you make the base ingredients, whether it's rice or potatoes or chickpeas, or cooked vegetables or raw vegetables, and then you let everyone kind of assemble their own, because then what happens is you can get stuck in this place where it's like, but we don't like ham. Well, ham is all there is for dinner with mashed potatoes. But if you think more about how can I bring all these ingredients that can go in a bowl and everyone can make their own bowl, then it's a little simpler and it frees you from having to make a meal. Then you're just preparing the separate ingredients, whether it's chopped up lettuce or it's fajita vegetables, and maybe somebody doesn't like peppers, but the other person likes zucchini. You can make the peppers and the zucchini separately, and then they can just mix them, if they can put them together there.
Yep, perfect.
I think that's great when you have children around. It worked for Roland's kids.
Yeah. So another thing that we're going to send out to you is this mix and match shopping list. And it sort of takes the same concept, because in order to use the mix and match list, you kind of have to have things in all of these different categories. So I have a PDF that I can send you, looks very similar. Well, it's just like the thing that's here on the right-hand side, but it just gives you some ideas. Like when you go to the grocery store, you don't even necessarily need to fill this out. You can take this with you. You can say, oh, I need to get some sauces and salsas, some fresh proteins, some fresh veggies, some fresh fruits, and whatever little extras you typically have. Feel free to write it down, or you can almost wing it once you get more experienced. Then you go down to the bottom. These are things that, because they're frozen and normal staples, like for your pantry, they're going to last basically forever. So you can stock up. If you don't use it this week, not a big deal. You might use it the next week. So that includes the dried foods, frozen produce, canned foods that you like. Not all canned foods are amazing, but like things like tuna, pozole, like hominy, to go into soups and stews. Chickpeas, other kinds of beans are great canned foods.
Coconut milk.
Yeah. Yeah, and then there's also like, smoked meat, preserved things, and frozen bases, like there's simmer sauces and things that you can find. So there's just some ideas, right? So we'll be sending this out to you as well.
I would say our emergency meals are mostly either burger patties or mahi burgers or salmon burgers that we get from Trader Joe's, and other health food stores have them too. And also the tiny little Applegate breakfast sausages and sausage patties. So those are the frozen kind of emergency stash, where if we don't have time to cook, if we don't have time to prepare protein from scratch, then that can just go in a pan and we just make the vegetables to go with.
Yep. All right, so every once in a while you buy something at the farmer's market or at the grocery store, and then you get it home and you're like, it's gonna sit on your counter or sit in the fridge for a while. And you just
like kohlrabi.
Yeah, kohlrabi, beets for some people, they just don't know what to do with it. So our tip, super simple. And it's like when people say, when people will text us sometimes, what do I do with this thing? And we're like, so we don't always know, but when we do, we just go over to Google and they're like, oh, you're amazing. Well, you can be amazing too. In front of your family, just Google this. Just get used to Googling this stuff, right? So the key here is to use the keywords in Google. You can almost like phrase like a question. And you could say, how do I make this? How do I make these? But you can also just type in things like recipe and then like the kind of vegetable, the kind of recipe that you need. Are you a vegan? Are you paleo? Do you have an Instant Pot in front of you? So you can type that ingredient and that thing, and I guarantee you, too many sometimes recipes will come up. Best thing about Google recently is they've been saying like how many reviews, and they rank them by how popular and how good these recipes are. So you can click over there. I almost never follow the recipe exactly, but it gives you some great ideas about what goes with what and what doesn't, and how to cook it and how long to cook it. Then I always usually save after we try it a couple times, I save my favorites, just like bookmark it. It's a good thing to do. And then we recommend this book, The Flavor Bible. It is an amazing book. I don't think it's available in ebook, and I would not recommend it because this is a book that's like a dictionary.
It's a Bible.
It's like a master index. When you flip through it, it has every food you can imagine alphabetically. And then you can just see and then listed underneath is what foods go great with this. What are the best cooking methods for it? What are the spices that go with it? What are the flavorings like coconut or coconut milk or curry powder? Like It's a great book. I highly recommend it. If you like to cook or if you're wanting to cook, look up this Flavor Bible. It's a great thing. And it's a beautiful book too. Finally, when it comes to being healthy or trying to lose weight, give yourself permission. I give you permission. Don't be perfect, right? So eat more freely 10% of the time. And I actually suggest that you try to eat less perfect 10% of the time, because if you hold yourself to the standard of 100%, eventually you're going to cave in and you're going to fail. And then when you do, you're going to feel so guilty about it. So build this 10% freer eating into your plan, into your system.
And I think if people have a hard time imagining how to calculate that 10%, something that we've been teaching for a long time is to get an average of how many meals per week you have. For example, if you eat 3 meals a day, I want to know how do you find the time to eat 3 meals a day? I'm kidding. But if you're eating 3 meals a day, that's 21 meals per week, and 10% of that is 2.1 meals. It's 2 meals that you can be a little more relaxed, which means that perhaps Roland and I can go and do the fish and chips truck that's in our town every Friday. Or you can do, last week I had a day where all I ate was rhubarb pie. That wasn't pie, but it was crumble. I ate rhubarb crumble all day. That was my only food that I ate. I had some beet juice before that. And by the time dinner came, Roland made osso buco for dinner. He made beautiful, long cooked osso buco for dinner. And I looked at that meat, and it's like I hadn't eaten meat in months. I was like, oh, protein, because all I had eaten all day was this rhubarb crumble, and my body was starving.
You might be asking why we have so much rhubarb crumble in the house. It's because it's a recipe for the August membership. Yeah. And we have to try it a couple times to make sure it's delicious and make sure it works perfectly. So you have to try it, write the recipe down, try it again, check your work.
Check your work.
Boy, do we check our work.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's 2 meals a week. And if you eat 4 times, a day, you just do the math. It changes, but also the sizes of your meals get smaller.
So we'll say that this has been studied, right? So I'm a precision nutrition coach, and Precision Nutrition has done studies, and they've also referenced other studies as well. The difference between 100% and 90% in weight loss and health results is so small that they were unable to chart it. And the people who did 90% instead of 100% lasted 2 to 3 times longer without, they went 2 to 3 times longer towards their goals, right? I'm saying that wrong. They stayed on their plan 2 to 3 times longer.
Yeah. So
because there are positive effects that can't easily be counted to cutting yourself some slack.
Yeah, well, especially, in the past, you might have cut yourself slack going out to a restaurant with friends, and now we're all inside all the time and we don't go out as much. So I think you can just have special nights, you can have fun nights. As well, to build that 10% into your plan. And then you don't have to feel bad or limited that you don't have that opportunity.
Exactly. All right, so these are the things. We're going to send it out to you in your email later, along with the replay, right?
What is the one with the colors?
Oh, some recipes.
Oh, you're sending some recipes?
Yeah, there's some recipes.
Oh, cool.
They go with the mix and match stuff.
Fantastic. Great. So I'm just going to tell you a couple of words about our community, why I'm telling you this.
Yeah, we've mentioned it a few times.
Because we've mentioned it a few times, and with all this rhubarb crumble. There's some people here on the call that are in our community. Love you guys. So happy to have you there. But Roland and I wanted to come up with a way that we can keep people inspired and satisfied and sustainably on their self-care track for as long as they can be with us and want to do it. And so it's going to be 2 years in October since we've had our 365 community. And essentially it is a place online where we share information each month. So it's like a library of beautiful recipes, movement and mindfulness practices, because we believe that you need to take care of your whole being, not just what you eat and how you move, but also how you think and how you approach yourself and your world through mindfulness practice. And it's a really beautiful way to keep things fresh people get so tired by doing the same things all the time. And so it's almost like you open a new surprise box of creativity each month. There's a wonderful cookbook that we've created from our first year of recipes. We're going to be adding our second year of recipes soon.
It's coming up
that's
soon.
in there and is a resource. So those of you who really want to increase your chance of staying on the great cooking bandwagon, we invite you to join in. And here's how we do this. Our community is full of very special people, and I'm sure all of you here on the call are as well, as you've made time for us. But we want you to know more about it before you jump in. So this month, every month has a new theme. This month, our theme is Make It Fresh. So we're shaking up areas of our life that are stale and stuck. So if you're feeling stuck or stale in any area of your life, might be a great month to join us. When you join us, you also get access to our archives of months and months and months of work that we've done there. But we want to offer you to jump on a call with Roland to learn more about the membership. And if it's right for you, to hop on, and we're going to honor our offer for being on this webinar or watching the recording to join us for 50% off. So our membership is $400 a year, and you can save 50% and join us just for $200, which means that for less than $20 a month, you can really have access not just to us as coaches and all of our coaching calls and inspiring conversations in the community of people that are online, but also incredible resources and hundreds of dollars of bonus content that comes in here, as the membership gives you access to other products and courses that we've created. So here's how we're going to do this. If you're interested, just type yes in the chat, and Roland will get in touch with you and schedule a little free call with you to show you around the membership and see if it's a good fit for you.
Yeah, there's no obligation, but I'll give you a behind the scenes tour of it, right? And help you like take a look at your goals, how we can help you with your goals, and just to show you all of the things, because you know that we talk about right here, eat, move, and live. There's so much there, right? So there's something for you, and I would love to help you find it.
Yeah, and if you're watching this as a recording, you will not be able to type yes. So just respond to the recording email with a yes, and we'll get in touch with you. So back to everyone who's on the call here, I want to hear your questions. We're going to take some time for questions. If you have them, you can, can you unmute everyone?
I can.
Roland will unmute everyone so you can ask your questions, or you can throw a question in the chat box. And we have somebody who has said yes. Excellent. Vivian is interested. Vivian, yay. I have a guy who can set you up. I have connections. I'll hook you up. What questions are coming up? Yes, Noreen has a question. Noreen, do you want to unmute yourself and ask, or do I? Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. So the chart that was kind of yellow background, it had the protein on the left column with the salsa, and then the veggies, fruits, and then that final column, I guess the bonus column. Can you clarify for me, like when you said salsa and to the right there are a bunch of fresh ingredients, did you imply that those ingredients are to make the salsa, or they're to accompany the plate, or a combination thereof?
That's a great question. It's actually a jar of salsa that you can buy, or you can make if you make your own homemade salsa. Then we're using the salsa sauce as an ingredient in cooking the chicken, or in cooking the beef, or in cooking the sausage, as a way to kind of spice it up and make it a little more interesting. So it's not just dry, and then we're adding it to other things. Or you can just have the salsa on the side, or you can have it on top of your tacos. It was just a way to think a little bit broader about creating your protein meal. Does that make sense?
Yes, but the other, like we had pineapple and blah blah blah. But so that is that part of the salsa jar, or is that no? So it's additional.
Yeah, those are just extra ingredients that tend to go well. So like if you make chicken with salsa, right? Then you go to the next column, and you can, those things are great vegetables and fruits to add either on the side or just to cook in if it's if it's appropriate. And then on the very end, it's additional like bonus things that also tend to go well with it.
For example, if you, like in the example that I gave, when you cook shredded chicken with salsa, that can go on one part of your plate, and then you can have a little pile of rice, and then you can have some cooked, bell peppers and onions and zucchini and carrots, and then on the side you can make a little dessert maybe that has pineapple in it. Does it make sense? So these are just things that go well together.
Yes.
That go well together within a meal. And the way I designed it was, this was kind of like our Mexican theme column. And so making a little fruit salad that has mango and papaya and pineapple goes so well with making some tacos that have the shredded chicken with the salsa in them.
Okay, I see. Thank you. And that would apply to the other columns and rows, correct?
Exactly. So, so maybe you can use, some spaghetti sauce and make some lamb meatballs with spaghetti sauce. And then you can serve that on top of some spiralized zucchini. And then you can put some Parmesan on top of that. And so you've taken something from every column and you've created something that is interesting and fun.
Okay. And I have another, is it okay to ask another question? Okay, it's sauce related. It's not related to what you presented today, but kind of related, because yesterday I saw a Food Network, Giada de Laurentiis article that said how to sweeten pasta sauce without using sugar. And she said to add butter to kind of temper the acidity, and it'll create a velvety kind of feel to the sauce. And then also they use carrots to sweeten rather than sugar. Is that kind of like, does that follow your?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And then also you have to ask yourself, how much sugar are you going to use? And is that going to, like if somebody has diabetes, that's huge, right? You want to not be adding more. But the other way you can also sweeten is you can roast some tomatoes. And when you slow roast tomatoes, the sugar content in the tomatoes is more, it comes forward, they get sweeter. So then you can put those in your tomato sauce too.
Oh yeah, that's right. That was the other thing that they talked about.
Yeah, it's great. We have a great recipe for a slow roasted tomato jam. If anybody wants it, let us know. I'm happy to share it with you. Okay, more questions. So Julie is asking, what do you do when you have too much fresh produce? So I'm going to give what comes naturally to me is there's a hierarchy of what we use first and what we use later. And we've taken some of that from Joe Robinson. Those of you who are in the community, you have a video with her this month. And so things like broccoli need to be eaten sooner. Things like spinach, leafy greens need to be eaten sooner, other than later.
Still good for you later.
Yeah.
But you get the best nutritional bang for your buck.
If you eat them more forward. So what you can do with them is, so as much as you can eat raw right away, and then whatever you can't eat raw, you can make into soups, you can make into stews, and then you can put in the freezer for later and defrost and eat later. Because Julie, I don't know if you're like me, I hate throwing away fresh produce. It just makes my heart ache. And so it's just so much easier to incorporate into a recipe and then freeze that recipe for later. You can also straight freeze some stuff. Like during our COVID shopping time, I've been freezing kale, and kale lasts really well when you freeze it. So if there are vegetables that can be frozen easily, you can just go ahead and just freeze it before it starts going bad. I hope that's helpful.
So last week we had a lot of zucchini, right? And so we had so much zucchini, and some of it in the crisper had rolled down behind. So then like half of it. So I'm like, oh, we have one night's worth of zucchini left. So let's eat it tomorrow. Then when I got it out, I'm like, oh my gosh, this zucchini is like near the end. Like it's got to be cooked, otherwise it's. And I looked ahead. We had something else we were going out or something, going to somebody's house the next night. So we needed to eat the zucchini, but it's so much zucchini. So we slow roasted it all, cut it into strips or grilled it, and it makes amazing leftovers for scrambling in eggs or serving as fajita vegetables. And once you've cooked it that one time, it's still good for another day or so.
Yeah.
So it's another way of putting your produce in places.
Yeah. Well, Julie also said that her freezer is already too full. I hadn't read that when I made my suggestion. I'm sorry. And she has trouble rotating out of her freezer. So I would say just cook as much of it as is possible. You can also dehydrate. If you have a dehydrator, you can dehydrate. Lots of produce can be dehydrated. And then Sandra is asking.
You can make pickles.
Sandra, yeah, you can pickle and you can marinate. Like I love marinated radishes, almost marinated carrots. So a lot of things can be marinated and put in jars, maybe, and that Julie then that puts it in your fridge instead of your freezer. Vivian says her mom used to use brown gravy in spaghetti sauce to calm the acidity. That's so cool. And then Sandra is asking, what systems do you use to eat at regular times? Maybe you can think of clients and how you help them with that.
Well, so at first, I actually tell people to put it on their calendar. Like if people have trouble remembering when to eat, and eating at a certain time is important, or near a certain time is important, I have them put it on their calendar. What that does is two things. A reminder comes up, and the other thing is it keeps people or them from putting an appointment there to do something else. So a lot of what I teach, whether it's teaching people health or weight loss or my author group or my business people, is to use a calendar more. Put a lot of things into their calendar when schedule these things. Because if it's not on, for a lot of people, if it's not on their calendar, it just kind of goes off into whatever.
Yeah, and I also want to add to make eating easy. So if every time you have to eat a meal, if it's like this big production, I'm thinking of Sandra, like if it's this big production to make it, then it's going to discourage you from taking the time to actually set the time aside to eat. So just making it easy where, you can make something in advance, or you can have your three go-to breakfasts so that you can always go and just grab them and it's easy. My other perspective is, how often are you checking in with your body? Because sometimes we get so busy in our heads, we don't have a reminder to check in with our body. And Sandra, your colleague, and you know how to check, how we sometimes set timers on our phones to check for pelvic floor tension or quad tension or jaw tension. So maybe you can set up little dings on your phone to check in with your body and to check for hunger signals. So I'm not just checking for my pelvic floor tension or my quad tension, but I'm also checking, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being I'm ravenous, where am I right now? And if it's anywhere between like a 3 and a 6, I need to go eat. So it's actually a reminder to yourself to check for hunger, because when we go too much in the head or when a creative flow or doing something else, we sometimes go away from sensing into the body and getting that homeostatic signal that says, come on, it's time to eat. Because ideally we shouldn't be scheduling ourselves for something that we should be hearing, but we can't hear it when we're too busy sometimes. So maybe a little ding for like, check my belly. Let's see, Julie. Yeah, so Julie's also asking that, how do you make sure that you use what's in your freezer? Oh, Roland's on top. You need somebody to do that. He's over there. He'll tell you. He has some sort of a system, but things disappear from the freezer all the time. So what's your system? I want to know your secret.
So when sometimes when I have a really, this sounds ridiculous, but when I have a really packed freezer, I label the jars, or I label the containers with like a little piece of masking tape with what's on it usually, because sometimes like we've made some purees of stuff that we're like, I don't know what this is, like smells frozen, right? So like you can't tell what it is. Is this persimmon or is this pumpkin puree? We don't know, right?
We'll never know.
We had to thaw it out to figure out what it was. And then you're like stuck with eating pumpkin puree in the middle of the summer instead of persimmon puree, right? So I label it. I just got a little bit crazy about labeling these things, putting a date on it and putting what it is. And then when I have frozen meat and vegetables, I keep like an inventory sheet. I had to put a Post-it note like right in the refrigerator, like a little sheet of paper, like right when I open the freezer, it's stuck right on the door, and it has all of the different things because sometimes I don't remember what's there. And most meats and vegetables will last a long time in there, but oxygen still does get in there, and they can get crystals of ice and they can get freezer burn. So you do want to rotate them. So that keeps me from finding something that I really wanted to eat, like salmon. Like if you have a piece of salmon, it's still safe to eat after a year, but it's not, the texture is not going to be good. So finding a really prime piece of salmon that fell to the back of the freezer is tough. The other thing is I sometimes take things out and I reorganize them and put them in an order that I'm going to want to eat them. And then I used to be in a restaurant. I used to work at a restaurant, and I learned to rotate my stock. So when you get something new, you put it in the back. So that gently pushes the older things forward and makes it more likely that you're gonna eat them before they go back.
I didn't know any of this stuff when we've been together.
It just happens,
a long
right?
time.
I don't even think about it. It's just like when I get something new, I put it in the back.
Well, so here's the thing though, like everybody loves those big bottom of the refrigerator freezers, but my front is just the top.
Right.
And so then it just gets, it's like, and I organize, and then so one thing I did come across, and I'm curious if you ever tried this, is it was talking about if you have meat that has freezer burn, or even sometimes vegetables, you can defrost, marinate, and freeze dry them. And then the water issue from the freezer burn doesn't come through.
Oh, how cool.
True.
Have you tried that? It was just something I read, and I was like,
Yeah, I have not tried that particular thing. What I have done when I've had something that's freezer burned like that, that's sort of mild, is I've used it for, soup or stew instead. Because like especially with stew, it breaks down so much anyway. So you have a tendency not to notice that.
okay.
So Julie, the other thing is like if you go to like a store that has containers, it might take a little bit of measuring ahead of time. But what I've done is, in our last place, we had one of the freezers that was above, right? And I had little plastic containers that would allow me to put stuff in them individually. Like, so I could put a lot of ground meat in this thing. So then I could pull that whole thing out, because otherwise what was happening is I had a huge pile of stuff and there were not enough shelves. Like I almost wish that there were like little cubbies like in the freezer, but there weren't. So instead of worrying about cubbies, I made my own with those. It's like a plastic shoebox.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I would put stuff in there, and they have like lids that you can stack, or you can just sort of stack them if you're careful. And then you can even label those, like what's in those things, so you can see like what the gist of it is in there.
I think my core issue is it ends up as a hoarding spot, and I don't cook enough.
Yeah.
And the fridge is on top, the freezer is on the bottom. Whatever's in the fridge is what comes to mind. So.
Exactly. Vivian had a tip for you to take a period of time, a month, and empty it out. Like take a freezer challenge, I think is what she's throwing at you.
Some of us are old enough to remember when we had to defrost our freezers, right? So now they're like frost free, but we used to have to take everything out and you had to leave it open and you had to like let the ice melt, and then you had to either chisel or let the other stuff come out before you could pack it up. So that was a time when we just naturally reorganized our freezer, but now it's like we have to figure out another time. So,
Well, and the frost free actually creates more freezer burn because your freezer's constantly defrosting and refreezing. So it's a different issue.
So Vivian says the real food that suggests eating enough and to keep satisfied 4-5 hours, and that seems a little long between meals. So this is gonna vary, Vivian. It depends on how, like say that you start the real food reset and now you're eating every 2.5 hours. For you, going 3.5 might be like, okay, that's a win. And over time, spreading that time longer. Because if our goal is to actually meet what our body needs, having a ton of tiny meals throughout the day, A, takes a ton of time, like it wastes time, and B, it constantly takes you out of the mode where your body's becoming flexible at burning some extra fuel that it has stored. So whether it's stored in your liver or it's stored subcutaneously, we need to give the body time to reach its own resources. So if we're constantly giving it food, it can't develop that flexibility to go, okay, I can eat food, but I can also eat a little bit of my own. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And also with the real food reset, we're also trying to give our body enough fiber, enough vegetables, enough protein that it can digest for a few hours, right? It can take a few hours to digest. And one of the issues that a lot of the people that come to the real food reset have is they haven't been eating enough good food to be satisfied. It's like always trying to eat a little less, but never actually being satisfied. So you walk around hungry all day. And it's this awful feeling of like, oh, something's gnawing at me all day long and I can't do anything else and I can't focus. And I also can't reach my goals. So what's the point of eating healthy food if I'm gonna feel like this? But if you can really get into eating enough vegetables, and what that is for everybody will be different, and you might need to ramp up there. And if you're eating enough protein, you really shouldn't be hungry a lot. The hungry a lot is, your body either not having the flexibility to use some of its own sources, or just not eating enough, or not eating enough of the right stuff. Like if I have a smoothie that's 600 calories, and I can easily make a smoothie that's 600 calories, just not a problem. Within half an hour, I'm ravenous. It's like I have not eaten. So my body doesn't care about those liquid calories. It also doesn't care about bacon calories. I can eat a pound of bacon. What's that? It's like 1,600 calories. My body does not care. I can eat a pound of bacon and then I need to eat half an hour later. So really starting to observe, and I know you're working with Roland, so you've heard probably all of this from him already, but really starting to observe what foods are Vivian's foods. What are the foods that are like, I can eat this and I can go for 4 hours? And then what are the foods that are like, ooh, my body just really doesn't register macadamia as a source of nutrition. Just doesn't.
But it tastes good.
They do.
Oh, they're so yummy. They're ridiculous.
So there's a couple things also, like if you think about with this period of time that we recommend, like eating enough to kind of satiate you through that period of time, most people eat when they get up in the morning, pretty much first thing, and then they eat lunch, and then they eat dinner. So in theory, we should be able to go from those three, like one meal to the next, without being starving by the next one. So you don't have to be like, oh my gosh, I have to eat at lunch. But if you eat enough to where you're not starving, you're less likely to overeat at the next meal. And then you just sort of repeat. We've also been conditioned by dieting and by society that it's important to eat regularly, like every couple of hours. So what happens is we tend to, well, I don't want to eat a breakfast that's too big because I'm going to have my snack in 2 hours. And then a snack can't be too big because lunch, right? And our parents are like, don't eat that, it's going to ruin your dinner, right? So it could be, if you eat that, maybe you're just going to eat less dinner, right? So, but our goal is to get people out of the snacking habit. There's nothing inherently wrong with a snack, but healthy snacks are harder to eat than healthy meals. That's one thing. They're less satisfying. And a lot of times, like a liquid diet, like a liquid meal that we talked about, they don't register the same way. Snack is almost often like an apple and some nuts, or an apple and a piece of cheese or some crackers. 2 hours later, it's like you didn't eat anything.
Yeah, nobody really snacks on chicken breast. Like you could gnaw on a chicken breast for a snack, it would totally be fine. But
you just take like a rotisserie chicken with you to work and just use it, work on it through the whole day.
Yeah, it just doesn't really work that way. So hope that's useful, Vivian. And just give yourself okay, I lasted half an hour longer. For me, I used to have horrible hypoglycemia, and I had caused this on myself by eating too regularly. Because if I skipped, so the only thing keeping my blood sugar stable was eating. My body had lost all the flexibility of being able to regulate its own blood sugar using my liver stores, right, and muscle stores, because I was constantly feeding it something. And then I learned how to fast little by little, like half an hour and half an hour and half an hour, until my body restored its flexibility. And now I can go a long time without eating and I don't get sick. I had literally made myself unstable by all the regular eating.
Interesting.
Yeah, because your body needs to be able to say, hey, you know what? My human has tons of glycogen in the liver and tons of glycogen in the muscle, and it should have access to that. If you forget a snack, or if you get stuck at a doctor's office, or you get stuck in an appointment or in a traffic jam, you shouldn't have to start shaking and carry snacks with you everywhere like you're a baby. Like, we're adults, we have lots of metabolic flexibility, and so we have to retrain it sometimes because we've lost it. More questions. Noreen is asking, do we have any storage tips for keeping foods longer in the fridge? Noreen, we love to eat, so that doesn't happen a lot in our house. Like, we eat all the food that we make. But I know from experience, really, really important. We store everything in glass because we don't really like plastic a lot. But I know there's people who swear by using containers that you take the air out and it kind of vacuum seals things a little bit. We don't have any of those fancy containers in our fridge. I know people who are obsessed with these fridge storage systems that prolong the storage by taking the air out of the container. But really, we store in jars and we don't store long.
Right, and also, Noreen, it's
like fresh foods. So you stored in jar glass for fresh foods, like.
no, like cooked foods.
I was referring to fresh foods.
Like produce?
Like produce, yes.
Yeah, so produce, there are special bags you can get that hold in the moisture, because some produce needs to be cool, but some needs to be cool and dry, some needs to be cool and moist. So there are like bags you can get, like on Amazon, where like there are labels. We don't have any, but it's like labeled like what types of things go in what. And we downloaded the thing a while back. We shared where like, here's the produce, here's how to keep it correctly. Because like some people put tomatoes in the refrigerator, which does make them last longer, but it makes them taste not as good. Like the taste goes away when you put tomatoes in the refrigerator. Bell peppers, not such a big deal. Cucumbers, and better on the counter until they're going to go bad, right? So a lot of times, even though we're not huge fans of plastic, like if you can buy like mesh bags that you reuse many times that can keep some of these things fresh.
I use wet towels to wrap, not paper towels, but actual like linen towels to wrap
like
cilantro and parsley,
kale,
lettuce, those things that are leafy and are more gentle.
So it keeps it in a more humid environment. And if you need to keep it, like let's say like our crisper is not big enough. Like we have to our crisper is stuffed with produce, and then we use the shelf right above it. But you have to make your own sort of ad hoc crisper there, either with towels or bags, or sometimes even paper bags, because they're compostable and recyclable. But if you keep a paper bag from a grocery store, sometimes you can use that to sort of create this semi-humid environment without having it picking up a lot of extra moisture.
Yeah.
I swear by cilantro, putting it in a small jar with water in it. Put the cilantro in the jar, put a plastic bag over the cilantro, and seal it with a rubber band so that there's air in the bag. It literally will keep for a couple of weeks without going bad.
Is that in the fridge or outside?
It's in the fridge, and you do want to change the water every once in a while because that'll make it go bad. But for cilantro, because that stuff goes bad so fast.
That works with parsley too. It's a great tip. And the other day, because we're big fans of parsley, so sometimes we'll get like 2 parsleys at a time, 2 big bundles, and then they're like, oh, we don't have enough to make parsley. So like, because she'll make parsley salad. Karen. And so sometimes I'll notice, oh, this parsley's super wilty. So I'll take it like, it's like a vase of flowers. So I'll take a jar, put water, like cut off the trim, the ends, put it in there and like set it on the counter. And then like within like a half an hour, like suddenly the parsley's standing up again, right? And it's great, now you can use it again. Yeah. So the same thing with like if you're carrots, we buy carrots last a long time. Like in the olden days, people kept them in their root cellar, but they can still kind of get wobbly, right? So if you take a big bowl of ice water and submerge them in the ice water for about an hour, they will rehydrate, and suddenly you have like a really nice firm carrot again.
Yeah, we have one more question and we'll let you guys go because we've kept you over time. So Vivian is asking, what is our go-to hangry snack? For me, it's very different than it's gonna be for Roland. I need something salty and something sweet at the same time if I go in hangry mode. So I would usually eat some cheese, and it doesn't matter if it's cottage cheese, and I'm very grateful I can eat dairy. I know many people can't. But it has, whether it's cottage cheese or ricotta cheese, or it's cheddar cheese, or doesn't matter what kind of cheese, or mozzarella cheese, some sort of cheese and some fruit. Like if it's berries, or if it's an apple, or if it's a pear, and then a few nuts. So like yesterday I had cheese, blueberries, and pine nuts. And that's like my trifecta. Like I get all the taste that is needed, and I get some sugar in from the fruit, and I'm calmed down a little bit, and also try to stay away from Roland, because if I'm in that mode, I'm not happy.
So Galina just listed all of the things that they go in me, and then it's like I ate nothing half an hour later.
Yeah, he's
So,
completely different from me when he's.
I love cheese, I love fruit, and I love nuts, but those are like little things that I eat in addition to other things. They're like,
So what would you eat for a
condiments.
snack?
I love the leftovers from last night, whatever the leftovers are, right? So I always make extras whenever possible, and I'm careful to take them. Vivian will know this. I'm careful to take them and portion it off before. Like, so I will make 2 pounds of meatballs, right? And I'll portion them out so I have enough to be leftovers 2 days from now. So like that's 2 meals plus leftovers. Put them in separate little jars, because I don't want to like have one meatball. One meatball is not very satisfying, but I want to have 2 meatballs or 3 meatballs, depending on how much they weigh. So I'll make extras. I also eat leftover vegetables. So when Julie asked about like the, like what do you do with extra stuff? A lot of times I will just cook extra zucchini, extra onions, extra carrots. When our oven is on, we look in the fridge or in the pantry and say, what else can we roast? So what else can we use this heat for? It's free heat. What else can we cook? And then we have plenty of leftovers to have as snacks. And usually they're my snacks, because I'm more of a,
I don't like leftovers.
I love leftovers. Right?
not
I
like
would always rather have a leftover meal for a snack. And I'm usually satisfied enough that becomes the meal. And now I don't need another meal. So if I'm extra hungry, I'm hangry at like 10 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I can usually say, oh, I'm gonna have a small meal, right? And instead of having a full meal.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you guys. These were great questions. I want to honor your time because we've gone past the hour.
If you have more questions,
just
or
email
you want the free call and you're interested in getting the behind the scenes tour of our membership, hit reply to any of, you have my email, right? But hit reply to any of the emails we sent you on this and just say, yeah, and I will hook you up.
Yeah. So as we land, let's go back in the chat box, and I want you guys to write down one actionable step you can take because of taking time today to be with all of us, learning from each other and learning from us, and getting re-inspired for your cooking. What's one actionable step that you're going to take based on this? Whatever it is, it can be tiny, like it can be, oh, I'm going to skip a snack, or it's, oh, I'll put my cilantro in a jar.
Maureen says, I'm going to submerge rubbery carrots in ice water.
Excellent. I love it. I love that.
I love that. It works for other root vegetables too.
Okay.
Parsnips, beets, all sorts of things.
And Julie said she's going to put leftover roasted veggies into a frittata. So darn good. I can't wait for you to let me know how that is. Almost as good as blueberries in the scrambled eggs. And setting a timer, Julie and I have a thing. And then setting a timer to check in with my hunger signals when I'm in workflow. Yes, this is, Julie, this would be gold for you and for Sandra both, because we leave the body when we work, poor body. And then we come back and it's like, feed me. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that while you're putting your things in the chat, I will say that for years, I used to get so, I'm not going to say angry, envious that people would say, oh, I forgot to eat lunch today, right? Because I used to say that I forgot I already ate lunch and I ate it again, right? So, but over time, it's been 17 years, over 17 years since I lost my weight and I've kept it off, right? So for a long period of time, I was still hungry all the time, and I had to consciously manage my meals, can't manage my hunger. But I've gotten to the point in the last like 5 or 6 years where sometimes I forget that I didn't eat lunch. I mean, I forget that I'm like, oh, what did I have for? Why am I so hungry?
You're one of those people.
Oh, I
now.
didn't eat lunch. I forgot, right? So I have gotten to the point where I do that as well. I have to check in. I have to schedule some things because there are good reasons to schedule your meals, but there are also good reasons to look back and say, wow, it's nice that I can not be so focused on it for a period of time and not be hangry all the time. Those things get better. They get easier.
So Kristen is saying a tip she's taking away is she can take apart her meals for her family so she meets everyone's needs. Yes, Kristen, just like deconstruct, like you know how famous chefs do deconstructed things. They just deconstruct the big meal. And then Sandra says she's going to listen to the quiet hunger signals instead of just the loud ones. Please, 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 please. And Vivian says she loves the matrix of food ideas. Yeah, I like that doodle too. I hope you make it your own, Vivian. And Jenny says that the mix and match matrix looks promising. It's a very promising start. Where it's going to really blossom in your life is when you make it your own and you really take like an hour to sit down and do a little creative exercise and write down all the things that you can mix and match together and you can play so you can do your own chef experiment.
Yeah, there will be things on that list that you never want to eat or you can't eat. You just don't want to see it, or you want to simplify and say, look, these are like the 10 combinations of things that I'm going to be able to go on for right now. And then you can add things slowly over time. And it just by looking at that at a glance and knowing what your options are, takes so much pressure off.
It takes so much pressure off. And I just want you to also encourage you to make your food taste good. Make your food taste good, because so often our dissatisfaction and hunger actually comes from making meals that don't taste very good. Because there's something in our mind about health and fitness and wellness that and that comes, a lot of it comes from fitness and bodybuilding, and most people in fitness and bodybuilding could care less about taste. And so there's been some mixture into the wellness culture that's come from those fields. People who can eat chicken breast and boiled rice with nothing on top of them. And that's kind of seeped into the rest of the culture. But if our food doesn't taste good, if you remember me saying taste is a very important part of nourishment, and we need to have the tastes and we need to be able to taste them. Sweet and sour and salty and pungent and bitter and astringent and umami. We need to have all those tastes in our food. And when we are lacking taste, oftentimes we'll eat more to compensate for it of the bland food, and we're still hungry. So make your food tasty, use lots of herbs and spices, and sauces are great. That's why we put sauces in our matrix, because it's such an easy learning spot. But just make your food yummy. It really pays off.
Absolutely.
Very cool. Sandra is putting her parrot on a new diet, so we'll see how that goes. Keep us posted, Sandra. He needs a fresh start.
Or actually eating whiplash.
Oh yeah, it's totally eating whiplash when you haven't, and then all of a sudden you're like, it's time to go. Thank you guys. Thank you so much. Have a beautiful weekend. Thank you for co-creating a great time together. We're planning on doing a webinar like this every month on a different subject. So if there's anything else that you're curious about learning, just put it in the comments. And if we're competent enough to teach it, we will. And if not, we'll invite somebody.
We'll get a guest.
We'll get a guest. Yeah. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Have a great day. And those of you in Hawaii, have a wonderful morning.
Bye.
Bye.